два, три, наживо. Hello and welcome to the European Resilience Initiative Center live video podcast. Today, our guest from Kiev live is Mykola Bielieskov, who is an analytic at the Come Back Alive charity foundation, which supports the Ukrainian army, and he is an analytic at the National Institute for Strategic Studies of Ukraine, one of the most important strategic institutions in Ukraine. Welcome, Mykola.
Hi, and in advance, I'm sorry for the lack of light. It's actually an evidence that we indeed have this regular cutoff that affect our life and are a result of Russian missile strikes that make our electricity distribution system to do regular cutoff to balance supply and demand. So you see, it's real. So it's not like we are pretending that we have some problems. So it's real. It's a result of this. I'm sorry for this, but that's the life we are now living in.
Indeed, it is live proof of the power problems in Ukraine. Russia has attacked Ukrainian electricity networks repeatedly since months. Kharkiv is suffering without electricity, practically completely cut off, but other major cities, including the capital, Kiev, have electricity only several hours a day. You can see that, Mykola, I'm very thankful for you that you have found capacity to find like connection through mobile network, which is operating in your district, but other power sources are not available. So thank you very much that you have found this time and this opportunity for us to interview you and to talk to you. And once again, as it is now 8 p.m. in Kiev, the sun will go down and there will be less light. So we will try to hold as much as possible on this conversation. But for our audience, you see that the conditions are really, really hard. Thank you, Mykola, once again, that you have found time for this conversation. But coming back to the topic of our discussion, NATO Summit, the 75th Summit of NATO has taken place in Washington DC, in the most powerful country member of the alliance. And in contrary to the Vilnius Summit last year, there were not so much hopes, as far as I understand. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But what is the results of this summit? Are you satisfied with what you have heard from the Washington DC?
Well, since I always remind people that expectations management is important thing, and I didn't have much expectation out of the summit, like Vilnius Summit. So some people felt disappointed after Vilnius Summit. I also felt disappointed, but I didn't have as much expectation as people. So both in 2023 and 2024, I understood that, well, Ukraine indeed want to have NATO membership as soon as possible. And our partners is fine with improved partnership model. That's why only result we can get here and now is another bench of aid, like hardware or like financial support, like another initiatives to strengthen Ukraine NATO connections, some other institutions, and that's it. So I can say that, well, for sure, Ukrainians, our authorities, we want to have as much as possible, including some membership and road to membership. But in meantime, we understand that, well, if we have that high expectations and we don't see results, for sure we will be disappointment. So that's about expectation management. But again, to compare these two summits, in 2023, as far as I understand, our authority strategy was to press a little bit publicly our partners, and it created not so good picture, and everyone was disappointed. So this time our partners did some preparatory job. They in advance told Ukrainian authorities, so you better not to raise any kind of invitation, not to press any kind of invitation, especially publicly. and then you won't feel disappointed and you won't spoil our party. So, because NATO summits are always like a prepared party. Every decision is usually prepared. So there was a Trump for year period that was a major surprise for everyone. But in general, that's prepared parties. And this time, I guess our leadership decided to pursue different approach. Instead of pressing publicly, instead of give us like prospects of membership, invitation to alliance here and now, they decided to stick to more cautious approach, because they also understand internal politics in US, very tricky politics in US, by the way. And for various reasons, even before the summit, public statements by Volodymyr Zelensky, he was more cautious and he decided to stick to the approach, okay, you're not ready to invite us here and now to suggest this invitation, so at least provide us something meaningful in terms of weaponry and armament. And that's how it happened, basically.
Indeed, like a complicated balance between hopes and expectations and the reality. When you set your hopes too high, you can be disappointed, or even your allies can see, okay, like your expectations have not been fulfilled. Like maybe you're not as reliable as we believed you are. But if you set the expectation bar very low, then your partners say, okay, be happy with what you got, because it's still too much. Mykola, I can hear like in my earphones that you have like some sound on the microphone. Maybe it's a microphone which is like touching your clothes. Yeah, now you're holding it. It's even worse. Yeah. So if you can like have it like a bit in a distance from your clothes, or if you have an external microphone, maybe you touch it, so it could be better a bit for our audience. But still, I'm very thankful. It's really unbelievable that you have found a technical capacity to connect to this live, due to despite the fact that you don't have electricity in Kiev now. And thank you so much for that. But what one of the most moving, from my perspective, news from this summit was the delivery of F-16, which has been announced. Still, it was an announcement of F-16s, not the delivery itself. And we have heard that message this year, this month, this summer, until autumn. There will be F-16 and 10, and still no F-16 for Ukraine. What is the reason for that? Like, why there are so many announcements and no jets until now, despite all the promises from many nations?
Well, first of all, I hope now sound is a bit more smooth. If yes, then just prove it, maybe. Oh, lovely. That's a good improvement. So in terms of F-16s, as for me, it's a good example when our partners, they want to generate additional evidence of result, but simultaneously they are producing more noise and they create a confusion. But let me bring a bit more clarity to this issue. So we have a principal decision by the number of European countries, namely Netherlands, Denmark, and later also Norway and Belgium, to supply F-16s after the green light out of US in August 2023. So that's first thing to keep in mind. So there was a lot of discussions to get to this point, but August 2023, that's precisely this moment. Then our pilots, they started training like in Arizona in October 2023. That's a starting point of training. And the usual training period is up to 9 months. So you can calculate that since October, it's precisely like last quarter of 2023 and the first half of 2024. So if people expected F-16s before second half of 2024, then unfortunately they don't want to get into details, and that's why they get disappointed. So yes, we see a lot of evidence, a lot of announcements out of our partners which want to demonstrate additional support, additional momentum, but actually there was no ground to expect F-16s earlier than the second half of 2024. And we're just in the first months of the second half of 2024. So unfortunately, our partners brought a lot of confusion with all these statements. But With this decision in August 2023, with the start of training in October 2023, F-16s could be expected realistically no sooner than this quarter, or even, I don't know, maybe there might be some other obstacles, even the second quarter of 2024. So that's it. So thanks for raising this question, because indeed people have a lot of confusion and as a result a lot of disappointment, but that's a result of not maybe getting into some details, plus partners raising this issue continuously, though they have nothing actually to provide. That's very, very confusing development indeed.
When we talk about that, we have seen that the politicians make a lot of announcements, and they address mostly their national audience. It's understandable. They are democratically elected leaders, and they need to be to make their policy understandable for their voters. But from the military perspective, isn't it silly to make it publicly and to say it openly, so Vladimir Putin and Russian generals see it and say, okay, they're about to do that and that, maybe, maybe not, but there are like that and that framework and guidelines for that. So we have time to prepare ourselves. We can time like to relocate our assets from the reach of F-16. Like from my perspective, it would be better just to send F-16, and the Russians should know that they are in Ukraine the moment when the missiles launched from F-16s hit the Russian military bases. Like not announce it in advance. What's wrong here?
Well, you actually touched upon a very important thing, because strategy is done at the junction of military and political considerations. And you're absolutely right that
operational security is really important thing to do, and preserving some kind of surprise is important thing. But simultaneously, you need to keep moral in Ukraine. And some people, unfortunately, again, because of lack of explanation, lack of understanding, they think about 1-2 squadron of F-16 as a game changer. Yeah, they have some wrong understanding. That's a misunderstanding. But simultaneously, it's still a kind of boost to their moral. So now you need to balance two things. On the one side, operational secrecy, which is indeed important. And we have only one example when operational secrecy was preserved to great effect. It was the shipment of short-range ballistic missiles of ATACMS type. They were provided.
Yes, it was a great story. Like when they hit Russian airfield unprepared, destroying several helicopters. We still remember the visuals when the Russian soldiers like filming it with their phones like crazy and saying, "Oh my gosh, everything is burning, everything is burning," and it looks really like apocalypse is now scene when everything is burning.
Yeah, but simultaneously you need to produce some stream of positive news. Positive news feed to keep people moral, because people look forward for another boost of Ukrainian capabilities. And these are the problem, how you balance political considerations and military considerations. And by the way, you mentioned the thing that for Russians to prepare, let maybe clarify things. Right here, right now, what we can expect out of F-16s. We can expect of F-16s, first, it would be a huge boost for Ukrainian air defense capability. Because currently, Russian missiles, especially cruise missiles, they are bypassing land-based air defense. They know where this land-based air defense is situated. There are gaps in surface-to-air missiles bubbles. And they bypass, and then they go like for Western Ukraine and destroy some critical infrastructures there. F-16s armed with AIM-9, AIM-120, air-to-air missiles would be a huge boost. So it's a flying part of air defense, missile defense, and it's a huge boost. Another thing is to employ munitions already provided, like JDAM guided munition. That's precision guided bomb. Also, it's anti-radiation missiles. You mentioned some strikes that might affect Russian airfields or any other bit of military infrastructure. Right here, right now, we are unfortunately beyond this capability. We don't have this kind of capability now because it's up to United States to provide us with missiles of this type. Now our ability to do land-based strikes would be limited because missiles or munitions that are provided to F-16s, they are of limited type. So that would be another challenge. Right here, right now, it's about strengthening our air defense and also being able to utilize better these short-range munitions for ground effects that are already provided by US. So that's another story, that F-16 is just a platform, and then everything depends on first modification and also munitions provided. So that would be another battle between Ukraine and US back and forth, with Ukraine asking to provide long-range precision firepower to F-16s.
Indeed, and I'm really thankful that you have used the word battle, because I've had today a conversation with my very good colleague, and we have discussed that unfortunately, even among the good friends and allies, which Ukraine is with the Western allies, you need to demonstrate strength. You need to clearly put on the table your conditions, and you say, look, up to here I can negotiate. Everything beyond this line, it is not negotiation. We demand it because that is what needed. And especially among the fronts, you need to demonstrate as much hardship, as much strength and harshness as possible, because unfortunately it is as strong negotiations as against like competitors. I don't say enemies, but competitors. And you need to really to push your agenda and to persuade and explain yourself and make it clear, and sometimes even using audience in the partnership country and mobilize it to put pressure on their own politicians to achieve something. We are talking to Mykola Bielieskov, who is analyst at Come Back and Alive Charity Foundation and at the National Institute for Strategic Studies. And for those who have joined us right now, there is an explanation why it's so dark on another side. It's because Mykola is in Kiev now, and there is no electricity in his district, and the sun is setting down in Kiev. It's 8:30 almost p.m. in Kiev, so it will be darker and darker. And we're very thankful to Mykola that he has found the opportunity to join us via a mobile network which is still operating in his district. And he's doing this under the total blackout in his apartment. Thank you, Mykola. And that is a living reminder that is actually the consequence of the West not having provided Ukraine with enough intercept missiles this spring, when Ukraine literally ran out of missiles, and the Russians just within a couple of days have destroyed about, if I'm not mistaken, 8 gigawatts of producing generation power of Ukrainian power plants. And here we have new questions from the audience. Feel free to write your question. We are reading them, and they will be asked. Don't also forget to like, to share, to subscribe. Send this link to this audience, to this video, to this live broadcast to your friends. And we have some questions from Bobo Uzala. The question is, Mykola, how do you feel about kicking Russia out of the UN as well as other international organizations? And from Calvin Parker, the question is, Mykola, it's not just expectations that confuse people. They are simply progressing slow. I think it's about this public announcement. They're simply progressing slow compared to the present desire to have this geopolitical mess resolved into peace and security. So what do you think about kicking Russia out of the UN?
Well, we'd like to see Russia to be as isolated as Saddam Hussein was isolated after he occupied Kuwait. Because back at that time, if you recall, he was almost totally isolated. Only, as far as I recall, just Jordan is the only country which preserved relations with Saddam. Everyone else isolated Saddam, and unfortunately, we are living in a different period when there are countries that nominally say we are neutral, but they continue to import Russian gas and oil, also supported diplomatically in the field of information domain and perception. And well, I'd like to see Russia as isolated as possible. And that's precisely the idea, by the way, of Ukraine with all these peace summits. to bring as much countries which cherish UN Security Charter and the principles enshrined in UN Security Charter, and to demonstrate to Russia, look, you are isolated, you are alone, and better to negotiate with Ukraine based on these principles. But it's not up to Ukraine. We already formulated our position, and there is a bunch of countries in Latin America, in Africa, in Middle East, in Asia, which don't want to pursue UN Charter for this or that reason. So that's the problem. We'd like to see Russia as isolated as possible, but unfortunately, we don't see this, including Russia being present in UN, been able to lead UN Security Council for 1 month and rotation presidency and all other things. So yeah, that's a problem, but it's not to us, it's to other countries which cherish UN Charter.
Indeed, and I remind to the audience who are not who have not followed that discussion of de-Russifying the United Nations, that the problem is, the basic problem is that Russia is not a signatory power of the United Nations Charter. And the United Nations was founded by the founding members. The Soviet Union was one of founding members. And interestingly, Ukraine and Belarus were, because Joseph Stalin wanted to have 3 votes in the UN and not like just 1. So Ukraine and Belarus were founding members. And when in 1991 the Soviet Union collapsed, the legal basis for this collapse was the decision of the Supreme Council of the Soviet Union, which stated on the 31st December 1990, literally, the Soviet Union as a subject of international policy, of international law, has ceased to exist. And in this formulation, there was no place for Russia. There was no some wording like, and Russia has overtaken its rights, or the Soviet Union has transformed into Russia. No, 15 countries have been created after the collapse of the Soviet Union. 2 of them, Ukraine and Belarus, have got their seats in the US as a prolongation of their founding member status, so they have not been created, legally speaking. But other 13 new countries, including Russia, should have applied for their seat in the General Assembly of the UN. And all of them did it except of Russia. So Russia has never applied for a seat in the UN or in United Nations Security Council. The Soviet ambassador just appeared next day in the sitting of the United Nations Security Council and changed his flight from from the Soviet Union to Russia, and nobody complained. So there is no legal argument for Russia to be not even member in UNSC, but also in the GAUN, General Assembly of United Nations. And nobody has questioned it until now. Ukraine tried to push it legally, but of course, for many members, it is just an insult and say like, oh, how can we do it? Like, Russia is so powerful. But legally speaking, Russia has no place in the UN. It's not because Russia is bad or good. It's because Russia has never applied to be a member of this international organization. Sorry for this long intervention. I just absolutely love this topic because I love like legal, not only drones and other devices, but also legal framework of international relations. And we have new questions here in the audience from Chris Winters. The question is: it was stated that Ukraine declined Gripen themselves, the Swedish jet, and widely called out as lie this statement. Do you think it is likely that it was really Ukraine who said, let's focus on 1 aircraft at the time? And that is actually a very interesting question, because on the land force of Ukraine has got what Ukrainian former Minister of Defense Reznikov has called a tank zoo, with so many devices that Ukraine could not like really maintain them. What about the planes? Is Ukraine interested in getting 1 plane later, or as much planes as possible now?
Well, that's another confusing story, because as for me, when Swedish MOD head is making this or that statement, unfortunately, he's not specifying when that decisions were discussed. As for me, we indeed missed an opportunity to have Gripen instead of F-16. And this opportunity was missed when, unfortunately, Sweden was not admitted swiftly. And before Ukraine decided to concentrate its all attention on F-16s, and we started to do it in January 2023. There was indeed a moment, an opportunity, a window of opportunity to concentrate, for instance, on JAS 39 Gripen. But unfortunately, back at that time when Sweden was already applying for NATO, but not admitted because of Turkey, because of Hungary, they didn't have a luxury of giving us this limited stock of their own fighters. They have less than 100 fighters. So for them to give us one squadron of like 12, 14 jets or two squadrons, that's quite a risky thing before they were admitted in NATO. And we know there was even some part of Russian operation when some madman burned Quran in Sweden, and it was used by Turkey, by Erdogan as a pretext. No, we don't want to see this country, plus some Kurdish issue they also raised. So as for me, the most important thing in the story, when it was suggested, because if it was suggested after Sweden joined NATO, that's another story. Because at that time we decided it's F-16, and yes, we don't have a luxury to have two fighter planes, and that's a problem. So there was an opportunity. We missed it. We missed it because Russia interfered very, very tacitly, very carefully, but it interfered and it postponed Sweden accession into NATO. But when F-16 was adopted, to have a zoo of two fighter planes, that's a challenge in terms of training, in terms of logistics, in terms of maintenance, in terms of everything. And Gripen, that's very small fleet of these planes. So F-16, it's the most numerous fourth generation combat plane. Multifunctional. Gripen, it's also belong to this category, but there is less than 100 of them in Sweden, actually, and they can give us, half of their fleet. So there is a lot of nuances. As for me, people need to clarify when, at what circumstances, because all the statements, they only bring confusion, unfortunately. But yeah, we can say that for some time, Ukrainian pleas for fighter jets, they were postponed. And only again in August 2023 we have this decision. Before that, it was discussions. It was the process of persuade US, very slow one. It's only August 2023 at the starting point, and that's why it's only second part of 2024 when we are going to receive them.
Indeed, long discussions. We know that, especially in the first months of this great war, there were a lot of promises made, which created an impression that the weapons will be delivered ASAP. But then they postponed. Some of them have been recalled, etc. So it's a long story and really complicated. For those who have joined us now, Mykola Bielieskov is in Kiev amid power blackout. That's why in his room it's so dark. It will be even darker because
it's a regular cutoff. Let's say it's a regular cutoff, because when people hear blackout, they might think that we don't have any electricity at all. We have it. Unfortunately, there are like 6-hour pause, then 3-4 hours of electricity, and then again 6 hours pause. So yeah, that's a reality we are living in. That's a result of all these delays. Shortage of munitions. But well, I just want to clarify, because when people hear blackout, they might think that we are in a humanitarian catastrophe. So yeah, we have difficulty, and it's really bad, really terrible, but we still manage to live despite all these things. Yeah,
it is indeed a reality in Ukraine, and what I wanted to say now, like in this context, I have posted into the chat of this live broadcast in the link to a posting with an advertising of a question and answer session. I've recently been to Ukraine, delivering a new batch of drones for the 47th Brigade and for the 92nd Brigade, for Magura and for Holodny Yar. Mykola, you have disappeared. I hope you will join us. Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry for that.
But we cannot see you. I hope you will join us with video now. But anyway, until you're now fighting against the video camera, you can under this link I have posted in the group chat, you can see the posting in our community. You can ask questions if you want to know, like how, for example, how you can travel to Ukraine as a foreign citizen. What do you need to know? Is it safe to go to Ukraine? Or what do you need to know regarding logistics, border crossing? What is the life when you travel through Ukraine, etc.? Feel free to ask the questions. I will answer them in a question and answer session pre-recorded, and we'll post it on YouTube. And now, Mykola, you have appeared and you have disappeared once again. I hope you can recover this this technical problem, because I can hear you.
Yeah, sorry, I have some
Now I cannot hear you
alert,
anymore.
and my wife keep me.
Yes, now I see
can
you.
you hear
I
me?
see. Yes, I see you, and
So
I
we
hear
have
you. Good.
another. We have another air alert, and my wife keep me updated a little bit. And you know, I've checked so the status of missiles. So that's the life we are living in, unfortunately.
Gosh, I'm so sorry to hear that. It is indeed a very bad feeling to get this air raid alert news, and especially after the terrible attack 2 days ago, with several missiles hitting Kiev and killing a lot of people. I'm not sure if you can continue joining us, Mykola. Please give me a sign if you're still with us, if you think that it is safe for you to remain live.
Yeah.
Yes, but please, if you because it is
well,
the
actually,
worst. Yes, please.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we should wrap it up.
Okay.
For the security reasons. Well,
Of course. It is the worst
yeah,
thing
that's
which
another
can happen.
reminder. Yeah.
Absolutely, Mykola. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry because I've talked too much in this conversation, hoping that we will have like a longer discussion. But as we need to wrap up because of the air raid alert, stay safe. Go to shelter. Please greet your wife.
Yeah, thank you
Stay
so much for understanding. I hope that
safe.
we would be able to do maybe Q&A session.
Absolutely. Stay safe, Mykola. Thank you so much. And we can continue, like, wrap up it with some questions, which I can try to answer, of course, maybe 10% as good as Mykola can do, maybe 5% as good as he can do. But still, there are like some questions in the chat. I can try to do my best, and yes, that's life. That's why, like, we have our experts who are in the hardest conditions, wanting to provide you with information. And Mykola has done his best. And safety first. Yes, Chris Winter's right. Safety first. Absolutely. It is not what you risk, because we have seen 2 days ago several Russian missiles, cruise missiles, each with about like 500 kilogram of explosive, like 1,000 pounds of explosive, hit Ukrainian cities, Kiev first of all, but also other cities, and that was devastating. So I will try to answer as much as I can. I think like 5% as good as Mykola can do, not more. And I don't pretend to be more expert than he or a comparable expert. Kevin Parker asks, are we really prepared enough to step into the breach if the United States, for all intents and purposes, stops to support NATO? Will be a signal for China unleash their military. We have I would say we have like several factors here. First, Europe, and first of all, France pushed idea of so-called strategic autonomy for decades, not for decades, but at least for a decade. And that is one of the favorite things for President Macron. And many in Europe see that they want to boost their military-industrial complex and get rid of the dependency of the US, etc. The problem is that Europe is still not united. All countries have their own military production. And if you can find a compromise between France and Germany regarding what tanks should be used in the United European Army, or let me say, what type of assault rifles should be used, or what types of other equipment. Wow, I will buy a bottle of good wine. And we see that it's not the case until now. So first of all, Europe has not dealt with the development of its own army homogeneously equipped, with one command, with one strategic plan, etc., etc. France say, okay, we have our problems in Africa, we send our troops there. Germany says, okay, like we don't do it. What will be the answer? The second question is our production. We don't have like production which can be scaled up. We have tried to produce like 1 million artillery shells for Ukraine 1 year ago. We have failed. There are hopes that we will be able to produce 1 million artillery shells next year, but still the production is very limited. If you talk to all the producers of equipment, like producer of Taurus missiles, producer of other equipment in Germany, they say they can produce, but there is no order from the government. And according to German law, and in other countries, I think it's the same. In Europe, military producers cannot produce missiles or other types of weaponry without a clear order from the state. Now, they will be just like put into jail for that if they try. So there should be an order from the state, from a legal authority, and there is no such order, because, as we have heard, Germany's Minister of Defense Boris Pistorius recently, he still finds that Bundeswehr is underfinanced because his wishes have not been fulfilled. So I don't believe that currently Europe is capable to exchange to like replace the American presence here. And yes, it will be a huge negative signal for China. Yeah, so here are the next questions. Or will the economic impact globally be the chance Russia is waiting for? How much confusion will this cause in the EU? Well, I don't think that Russia has real like strategy, like using something with very clear means. I think Russia is more focused on our problems. Of course, they're interested that we have problems of any kind: economic crisis, unemployment, political crisis, rise of the populism, terroristic attacks, Islamist attacks, far right, neo-Nazi attacks, far left attacks, everything. Distrust of people into the government, collapse on infrastructure. They clearly want to help us to go into chaos, to sink in chaos. Today, the CNN reported that the US and German intelligence services have spoiled a plot of Russia to assassinate CEO of Rheinmetall, weaponry producer, and he has been already attacked in April this year. So that is what Russia is doing. In Bavaria, German authorities have arrested 2 Russian citizens who planned terroristic attacks on American training center, Bundeswehr American Training Center. And that is what is happening now. And of course, Russia wants to do it. They fund like far-right parties, they fund far-left parties, they spread propaganda, they provide all populists of all kinds with informational platform. They use artificial intelligence to like post troll accounts, etc. United States Department of Justice today or yesterday, I don't remember it correctly, posted the report saying that Russia uses AI to boost troll postings. And that's what Russia is doing. But what is the strategy of Russia? Do they have a clear plan with clear KPI, like this company should fail or this industry should fail? I don't think so. They're mostly planning very ad hoc, like very close to events, but they have a global view. They want us to be disoriented and distracted from the important things. I think that is their strategy. Yes, and here we have from Momo, Russia, but after Trump peace agreement, those countries, especially Germany, after 1 year. Okay, yeah, Trump is of course a great factor of uncertainty. There are people who expect a lot of bad from Trump. There are people who say maybe he will be a maverick who will like add some uncertainty, and that will be also no good for Russia. I don't know. I don't have here like any opinion because I'm not an expert. I just know that there are too much things which point out that Trump can be connected to Russia, and that is never a good sign. And yes, he has made some decisions which made Russians unhappy, but it doesn't say that his next decisions will be as good for making Russia unhappy as some of his decisions have been. So I think that that was a very short live broadcasting, despite because of the Russia's missile attack. I think it would be unfair to jump here in for the longer time instead of Mykola, who is an expert in contrary to me. But I believe that it was important to answer the questions or try to answer the questions which have been asked in the chat, because you had your expectations and you spend your time to watching this live broadcasting and you've posted your questions, and it's fair to try at least to answer them. So thank you so much. And if you have like questions which are related to my personal experience in Ukraine and my trips to Ukraine, as I said, like we have delivered 2 weeks ago drones to the 47th and the 92nd Brigade. Overall, we have raised in May, June about 75,000 euro, so 85,000 US dollars for the Ukrainian army, and purchased drones for 47th and for 92nd Brigade. We have overall 240 drones for the both brigades, 7-inch drones and 10-inch drones, and I've personally delivered them to both brigades 2 weeks ago up to the front line. If you want to know how do you rent a car in Ukraine with a credit card to go up to the front line, you may ask a question about it. I stress that I do not recommend anybody to go close to the front line. I do not recommend anybody to go to this district. It is unsafe. You can be killed, you can be injured, and you can get into troubles by Russian attacks, missiles, Shahed drones, loitering munition. But if you want to know how it works, feel free to ask, and I will do my best to answer your questions, how it looks like to go to Ukraine and to travel through Ukraine. How do you deal with power blackouts? And at the same time, how can you get into like how can you live life together with Ukrainians? How can you enjoy a peaceful life, because there are parallel war part of your life, like missile raids, but between missile raids you have your peaceful life. You can go to cafes, you can go to theater, you can go to museums, because exactly as during the World War II, London had normal life between air raids by the German Nazis. And like other countries, they had their life even fighting the war on the front line. Even on the front line, you can get coffee. And that is important to understand when people say, oh, they have their coffee. Like I've been to Mirnograd, just 20 kilometers from the front line. Half of city is destroyed by the Russian missiles. And you go through districts where people live, you see 4 or 5 stories houses, many of them destroyed, many of them have no windows, some of them partly destroyed completely, like into ruins because of direct missile hit. And then you have a coffee shop, like with 10 types of coffee: latte macchiato, americano, cappuccino, espresso macchiato, etc. Even with vegan milk, like coconut milk, heifer milk, etc. And an idiot or a troll would say, oh, that is a sign that the whole war is fake. No, it's a sign that people try to find reality and normality amidst death and destruction and fear of life. Because if you live in a house which has been partly destroyed by Russian missile strike, you need to have at least a chance to buy coffee, which has been prepared with electricity from a generator. And it will be closed at 8 p.m. because of the curfew. And that coffee shop is a sign that people want to live in Ukraine peaceful life, and they're ready to fight for that. And if you want to know more, like ask questions in this community, posting in the comments, and I will try to answer them all. Thank you so much for having watched this very short live. Unfortunately, Mykola Bielieskov had to go to shelter because there is now an air raid alert in Kiev, where he is, and we wish all people in Kiev to stay safe, and we wish all Ukrainians to win this war, because this is war which is not only about Ukraine, it's about the whole Western world. Thank you that you have joined us. Slava Ukraini.